Okay.
Okay. And do you want me to introduce you? I think we all know who you are.
You don't have to introduce me. I think the only person I haven't met is Amanda, right? Yeah. I recognize your name, but I haven't gotten a person yet. So.
I teach over at Roy County campus. So.
Okay. And what do you teach over there?
Psychology.
All right. Yeah, maybe we should go around and just introduce ourselves to Amanda, because she may not know a lot of us yet and what we teach. And I'm Donna Elkins. I'm the dean here at Southwest, but I teach in communications is my teaching area. All right, I'm planning on in the fall. I need to talk to Mary, my department head, about teaching in the fall.
Is that me?
Yeah.
I'm Patty Beebe. I'm the technology trainer for Jefferson.
Oh, okay. Well, she knows me.
I'm Liz Boyd. I teach here on the Southwest campus, CMC 105, and
I'm Drew Wilkerson. I teach math here. I'm excited about the hot water almost being done.
All right. And we just had a couple people join us. So we're just introducing ourselves and talking about what we teach.
I was in the writing center.
Writing center.
Am I supposed to be introducing myself?
You can.
Oh, okay. I'm Betty Schiffman. I teach English.
I'm April Moore. I teach accounting in the database class.
Okay. We are recording this in Collaborate so that other faculty who can't be here with us can get into the class later and listen to what we have to say. So just so you know that. And then Jeffrey is recording as well for professional development. So we'll have another recording, because we have noticed, I have already experienced this, that Collaborate sometimes is a little difficult to use. So, but Adam Elias is here today as well. He's doing all the technology stuff for me. So I think we're doing okay with the room. So you can go back and listen to this at any time, or we'll be having another session looking and talking about the same article downtown on Thursday. So if you want to go in later and hear what they had to say as well, that's also an option. So this is really the first session with something new that we're trying called Let's Talk Online Teaching and Learning. Some of you may have participated before. Randy Davis has had a series going downtown for a long time called Let's Talk Teaching and Learning, and the faculty just get together and talk about an article that they've read, and it's just really more of a time for discussion. So I thought maybe we could take that model and do some in-person discussions, but also take that into a Blackboard class. Because I know a lot of our online faculty either aren't present on our campuses or, can't schedule to come to a certain campus at certain times. So we wanted to have something where it was just a resource for people to use and to discuss and talk about the ideas that they've tried and things that they've done that have worked well. And so the two kind of topics that I thought we would cover this spring, this first one is about motivation and motivating the online student, and then the second one we'll be doing at the end of February is about the idea of instructor presence. So those are kind of the topics that we're looking at. So what I wanted to do today really is, I told Jeffrey, even though he's making me wear this microphone, that I'm not going to be doing all the talking. I really want you guys to talk. I have designed, or I have given you a handout, because sometimes I just like to have some place to write notes. But this is also in the Collaborate class, and so if somebody is listening to it or wants to see the copy later, it will be included there. I just developed some discussion questions related to the article. That does not mean that we have to talk about every single one of these, or that these are going to be the questions that came to your mind while you were reading it, but I thought it would give us a starting point for our discussion. So I guess I'll just open it up first and say, overall, what was your impression after looking at the article? Was there anything that's kind of stood out to you that
I felt by the third week I was a total failure. It was the part about every week making sure that students received feedback on, every student received feedback on something. And as a writing teacher, it doesn't happen every week.
Yeah.
Individually, that is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and there is that little chart. It's on page 42, and I was looking through that as well, and I thought, wow, that's a lot to do. It is a lot to do, especially if you're teaching multiple classes. Yeah.
I did think it was interesting that in their data collection, they only collected from adjuncts. They aren't collecting from full-time faculty members. They're collecting from adjunct faculty. And adjunct faculty, as a rule, have different motivations than full-time faculty do. You know, because adjunct faculty either are, you know, angling for a full-time position, or, you know, they don't have the committee responsibility, the advising responsibility. So I thought it was interesting that that was the group that they chose to study, and I don't know why they chose that group to study. But I thought that that was really interesting that they did.
It's a good point. Good point. And it may be because a lot of online faculty are adjunct faculty. A lot of colleges now are hiring, you know, faculty online on a part-time basis. So that may be why.
And it is 2006, 2007, and online might not have been quite as entrenched into the traditional college in 2006, 2007 as it is now.
Well, I mean, I look at it like, you know, what you were saying. I mean, you're not going to respond to every student every week necessarily, but I think as long as you're responding quickly, you know, as soon as they have a question, I mean, as quickly as possible, like within a day, to whatever their concerns are. Or if you see in the grade book that someone hasn't submitted something, you know, that was due in the last week or something, if you contact them, you know, to me that, you know, satisfies. I mean, except for like the first week, like my first assignment and my first week for in-person and online, they have to do a discussion posting where they state specific things like why they're taking the class, their favorite websites, you know, different things like that. And I respond to every single one of those. At first I did, and I was just responding to the ones that seemed interesting to me. But then I'm like, well, I guess I should respond to all of them. So now I respond to all of them. So, I mean, you know, that gets, but they're responding to something, you know, they put something out there that I'm responding to. So it is a first assignment, but.
Yeah. Well, one of the first things that the article looks at is the first questions that I posed were about age and motivation. And funny enough, Drew and I were just talking a little bit about this, is that do you think online students, are most of them traditionally aged, non-traditionally aged? Do you think they're motivated differently than our in-person students? Does age make a difference?
It does. I think it also depends on what the area is, the subject. So, I mean, like for example, a traditional student that just rose out of high school, if they're taking a CIT 105 course, probably they're going to be pretty motivated, because odds are they're into technology. Not like, say, for example, an older student who may be returning that's not as up to date with modern technology.
Okay.
I think mine are pretty balanced equally, but I'd have to say that of the students who fail, they're generally traditional. And I think because they have the wrong idea of what online classes are and think this is pretty sweet, and then they find out it's not at all. But the non-traditional students have the highest performance, the highest success.
So what do you think you do in your class that, is there anything that you do that you think leads to that success for a non-traditional student? I guess I'm not phrasing it very well, but do you think the way your class is structured or the assignments you have or anything else maybe leans to students that are one way or the
I
other?
find that they talk about metacognition in here a little bit, and I would actually argue maybe non-traditional students have a little bit better metacognitive awareness. Like if they don't understand something, they're much more likely to know that they don't understand it and maybe do something about it. Seems that way.
Which is sort of their, whether they're intrinsically or extra,
That
the
too.
reason they're taking that course, you know.
Yeah.
I think they're more likely to seek help.
Yeah, they seem like they are. Yeah.
I think they're more like, traditional students, I think, are a little less likely to seek help because they feel like they're supposed to know it all. But, you know, when you look at your introductions from your non-traditional, everybody does an introduction in my class, and when you read the non-traditional, they all start with, well, I don't know anything about computers. And then you email them a couple of times, and you find out they've been working with computers for the past 20 years. They just think that because they don't know Blackboard, they don't know computers. You know more than I do. And so I think they're more willing to reach out, whereas the young people are kind of like, oh, well, I'll get it. I'll get it. And of course, they never do. So, but I wouldn't say I have a higher pass rate of non-traditionals. I would say my pass rate's about equal, because my non-traditionals, you know, they're the ones who at the end of the semester have some god-awful kid, or, you know, something happens, they lost their mortgage or something, you know, it's always something catastrophic. And I'm getting these emails, and that's why they're not passing, you know, versus just, you know, the ones who are gone now. I mean, you know, the ones who are gone are already gone. I've already got students who haven't posted anything. But the non-trads will hang in there and hang in there and hang in there, you know, way too late. And I'm like, what? You know, so I think my pass rate's probably about equal. And my pass rate's quite high, actually.
From working in the advising center, it seems that a lot of the younger students that come in there think that this is going to be an easy A, or they're going to be able to get through it faster, or, you know, they're not going to have as much to do. And I think they are, you know, clearly they're I can't say that word, but the X one, you know, extrinsic in the reason they're taking it, but they don't care. Just from the general conversation of what the content is, they want to get out of it, in it, and out of it. You know, where the older students that I work with are really, well, you know, they're concerned about the content and what their previous knowledges are, you know, that they can apply. And it seems funny too that those that are more extrinsic often have the poorer grades trying to get into these online classes as well. So they think it's going to be an easy way to gather a grade.
I think that follows psychology, doesn't it? I don't teach psychology, but isn't it true that those who work from intrinsic goals tend to succeed at higher rates than those who?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do. Mostly it's in the face of when it becomes difficult. If you're intrinsically motivated, you'll kind of press on. You'll be a little bit more likely to, you know, stick it out longer.
Can you encourage people to be intrinsically motivated? I mean, are there things that we could do as instructors that would help them with that?
I think that if you can show the students the relevance of whatever they're learning, if they can somehow apply it to themselves, then that helps with that. At least somewhat. I mean, somewhat.
Well, I think that's the key to everything now. The kids that we work with now, they're our millenniums, are not going to learn anything that they don't see a value to. And if they can't figure out how that's going to empower them or give them a better life or something that really fits into something they want, they're going to brush it off. So I think that's the whole key to everything we do now is, you're not learning just for learning's sake, but it's got to be practical and have some relevance to their life as they see it, as we see it.
I was just going to say, one of the things I did with my introduction board when I was teaching Conf 252 is, and this was as much for me, April, you were talking about trying to respond to each student, and it was as much for me as it was for them, but instead of just saying introduce yourself, I set up some different forums and said, if you're a nursing student, introduce yourself here. If you're a parent with, young kids at home, introduce yourself here. If you're just too busy to be taking this class or whatever, introduce yourself here. And it kind of let the students self-select right from the beginning. And it let me kind of, in my mind, categorize which students kind of fell where. So I would have it's hard to keep track when you've got 50 or 75 or whatever online, and it even in person, but it kind of let me categorize, okay, I know this group of students are nursing students, these are, parents, so they've got young kids, they're going to have, issues related to young kids. These students are taking their first online class, and so they may have more questions about the technology. And then that way, too, I could just post to that forum and kind of respond to, I tried to respond to most of them individually, but I also could just post to that forum and respond to all of them. It is hard to, I've always struggled even in person to try to create a class that will meet the needs of a wide variety of students. And I think that's even more challenging online when you can't really see the students and sometimes you don't know a lot about them.
One of the things I do, and I think a lot of us do this, the first week I ask students not only to introduce themselves, but I link them to, I introduce it and link them to a page about myths about online learning, and then connect them to our own readiness quiz on our Blackboard. And then I ask them to post a blog that basically is a self-evaluation. What are your strengths as an online learner? What do you think your weaknesses are? And what do you think is going to be your biggest challenge as an online learner? And almost all of them come back, and they'll give me their score. And almost all of them say the same thing, that I'm very motivated, and I can work independently, and they all say, but I'm worried about procrastination. But every now and then, a burst of honesty will come through. The students will say, I don't think I work very well without a teacher right beside me. Which is an opportunity for us to talk about it, a dyad. So how are we going to deal with this? But I like getting their perspective on that and hitting that notion right away that knock down the myths that, oh, this is easy and takes less time and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of students who are experienced will post and say, I know I'll do well because I've done well in the past, and this is how I do it. So they become guides to some of the other students in the class, that they set times, just like they have a class time, and they don't leave it till the last minute. And then they tell why it's so useful to them, because, their work or their family or whatever. But it really gets it right up front. Are you sure this is the place for you to be online?
Did the other students buy into that then? Does it start a discussion?
It does. It does. Because, and sometimes it influences how they choose to read each other's work, because they have to do peer review. And I let them choose. They have to do at least 2, and lengthy peer reviews. And they pretty much go to students whose ethic is similar to their own. And sometimes it's a mix of traditional and non-traditional. But they recognize, I want to be like her. I want her on my team, or him.
Yeah. Yeah.
In talking about age and motivation, I think it's, we were talking about in online classes, it's especially difficult to know your students. You really have to make that effort. Especially with age, you can't just put up a discussion board and say, how old, how old are you? That's probably not going to fly. So I think in that sense, it's a little bit more difficult. You really do have to be creative in figuring out who your students are. I pull all sorts of data, and one of the things that I've started to look at, this was from, I think, this past August, just all the demographics of our online students, and I was kind of interested to see the age ranges that most of our online students fall into. In fall, and I thought this was interesting, so I'll share a couple things with you from that. In fall of 2010, we had the biggest group of online students in the age range from 23 to 39. And then since then, as of this last fall, that has actually shifted younger. So now we have the largest range from 18 to 29. So, and I guess that might illustrate how, as our base of online students kind of shifts to include more students across the entire college, that obviously pulls in more of our core, younger students. So, but, I think that as things go on, that could definitely swing the other way. As more students go back who are currently in the workforce, go back and take classes or try and find something that's flexible to them. So, it's hard to say how this will look in 10 years, but I think it's really interesting to see that, even in 3 years, that's gone from, 18 to 39 to, I'm sorry, 23 to 39 all the way up to 18 to 29. So anyway, so that's, it might be difficult to really know your students' age demographic in your classroom online, but we do have ways to find that out, and it's just kind of interesting to.
I wonder too, those of us who teach on campus web-enhanced classes where we post material and expect students to be checking their in-between classes, if that gives them more of an incentive to try an online class because they're guided through Blackboard. They have a safety net, and so they're not so wary of it.
My feeling is it's a scheduling issue because I had to schedule a bunch of my advisees into online classes, none of whom was happy to be there. Because our scheduling on this campus, I don't know what's happened to it, but my comm majors cannot get through without going online. They just can't do it. And the business majors can't anymore either. I mean, they just can't do it. And so I think the shift would be directly related to scheduling issues.
I think you're right.
Which does not necessarily make for happy people online.
Right.
Especially for the first time.
Yeah. Well, and I think the students that I've heard from in advising in other situations, if they have a good experience in their first online course, they're fine with it. But if they have a bad experience that first time, they really do not want to take an online course again. And so, I think that first experience is really important for them. This leads us into kind of the second thing, and some of you have already talked about this, is our study skills or preparatory kind of skills for everybody. One of the things that they talked about in the article was some of the things, Betty, that you were kind of alluding to is, what helping students prepare for doing well in the class. And so the question that I thought of as I was looking at that is, what study skills would be valuable to add to your course? Are there things that you should include for students? How could you do that? Are there things you could do to help students feel more confident in the class? And I go back to that idea that if you just provide, and I've done this myself, I've provided links and I've provided materials for students, but if it's not mandatory, they're not taking advantage of it. So how could you add that kind of material to your course, or do you have time to do that for your students? I think you gave us a good example of that, Betty, and some of the things that you were talking about.
Oh, well, I was thinking, in teaching a literacy course, I think you're always talking about study skills, but one thing I do is I break down the process, especially of research, and I use blogs a lot, so that students can. I don't use journals because students can't see each other's, but blogs they can, and then I require them to respond to those. But note-taking, for example, I'll post a model and show them, because they skip over that part, too often. And so I break down, that process of research to, narrowing the topic, doing some research and how to go about it, how to take notes, and I have them post their notes in a blog that has several entries. And again, they're learning from each other. Sometimes I'll say, check out so-and-so's blog, got some good examples of good notes. And I don't know what you're talking about. What I did.
Well, you were talking about that you take them to the readiness quiz and things like that, so that they're, that they're kind of prepared. They know what skills they're going to need. And
I also tell them, with that this counts for 3 hours of class time, and for every hour in class, what is it?
2 hours.
Yeah, and so I tell them, it's somewhere between 12 and 15 hours a week, and they're aghast at that.
I was too. I never spent 15 hours a week on a class in college. Grad school, yes.
Yeah.
College, no. College was not that hard.
Yeah.
But, and I don't even tell mine that anymore. I tell them, if you'll give me 15 minutes a day, I'll be real happy with you. If you would take 15 minutes a day and study whatever terms we've talked about in class today, or whatever terms are on the test, or whatever, if you'll take 15 minutes, because that's what they tell piano students, cello students, art students, which I was a couple of years ago. And I did not believe them because I could not draw stick people. And, an art teacher was like, 15 minutes a day. If you sat up and say, I'm going to practice an hour a day, you're never going to do it. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to get upset. You're going to be miserable. Everybody can carve out 15 minutes a day. And that's what I did. And I couldn't believe it. And, when Will does cello, and I'm like, if you'll do 15 minutes a day, it's all I ask. And that little repetitive, and they're like, well, do we get weekends off? And I'm like, no weekends off. 15 minutes a day means 15 minutes a day. Because it's like you're doing, I'm like, you're going to do 30 minutes on Friday and 30 minutes on Monday, then yeah, you can have a week. But that's what I tell my on-campus students, and I think that really helps them. I think that they realize that they don't have these enormous chunks, because 15 hours for one class is daunting. In fact, if you take a full class load, and you want to sleep 8 hours a night, it's not physically possible at a certain point in time. And then they go, oh, well, no, but you can't do that. And I'm like, no, maybe you can't do that. But you can do 15 minutes a day. And, if you'll give me 15 minutes a day, I can almost guarantee that C will bump to a B. So I think you have to be real realistic about their lives, too. And real realistic about how daunting that was. I mean, when people told me that in college, I was like, and at first I took it real seriously, but the minute I set aside 2 hours to study, my psych book, I was asleep in my psych book, But when I was real active doing stuff, and, like I had my note cards and did my terms or whatever, and that's what I tell them to do, then it wasn't daunting anymore. It was like, well, I'll work on these for this short amount of time, and I'll figure it out. And that was real helpful. And I think for them that's real helpful too. I think these are not people who traditionally have spent hours and hours and hours in some sort of study. And by the time they're seniors in graduate school, yeah, sorry, suck it up. Graduate school, you have no life. But, as ours, who are almost all freshmen, sophomores, I think that to just flat out tell them that is daunting and discouraging. Whereas if you tell them, you can do that, if you would write for 15 minutes a day, your writing would improve. If you will draw, if you will whatever, I promise it will improve.
In fact, I refer them to Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, who says, what is it, 10,000 repetitions? And of course, he says that produces outliers like Tiger Woods, Oprah, really phenoms. But it's the same idea that repetition,
A little bit of time.
habit,
Yep.
habits.
And I tell them, takes, you know, most of the research in Calm anyway says it takes 28 days to change a habit. So until you've done it for 15 minutes a day for 28 days, don't talk to me about it can't be done. It can be done, you know.
I think it's a question of focus too, because so many students, and I see this in myself, I mean, you sit down to read something and the phone's ringing and the email and the, you know, and you're so just distracted. If you can just give yourself a shorter amount of time and really focus on what you're doing, that you'll make a lot more progress. But, and you can control that somewhat in the in-person class, but you can't control that for the students online. And I know a lot of them are doing their work in the evenings and weekends when their kids are home and they're trying to, you know, and so I think sometimes their focus is really a problem.
I think if we believe students are going to be successful in online classes and all we do is put up a lot of stuff to read, we're shooting ourselves in the foot right there. They don't want to do that. They need activities. They have been, since they were children, they learned for fun. You know, even Sesame Street, you know, they learn the colors and then they back off and they're here and they're back in the colors. I mean, they are just, their minds are constantly flipping. And to think that we're going to come in and change that overnight because now they're in college, you know, we're crazy. And the classes have to have all kinds of activities. 15 minutes might be a little short for some of us.
But if you did it for every day.
But yeah, I hear what you're saying, but sometimes in software, for example, you don't even get it turned on well until that 15 minutes is
I don't
done,
get
you
that.
know.
I don't get that.
Especially if you're doing Collaborate.
I don't get it on Blackboard.
But I understand what you're saying, you know, the shorter times. But even if the times are longer, as you're suggesting, to think that they're going to sit and read for 2 hours, you know, that's hard even for us, and we're quite disciplined in that. You know, we don't have time. Our minds start racing. I've got to do this, and I've got to pick that up. And next thing you know, I've read 3 pages, and I have no idea what the words were. I looked at words, and I didn't understand a thing. So in those study skills, that I don't know how you define that particularly, but we do have to make sure that we've put things up there to encourage them. They read something, give them a few questions on it, you know, so that they have to respond to it. And I'm an old believer in grades. You know, they're not going to do it for their intrinsic value. They're going to do it because they're going to get a grade. And sometimes that leads to other interest. So.
I think kind of going off that, I think a lot of times we have the tendency to see all these new technological addictions as distractions. Like, you know, I was listening to NPR on the way here today, and they were talking about people that are addicted to their phone. And this one guy was talking about he gets onto his daughter all the time because she's always texting people. And so they pulled their phone records, and it turns out he was on his phone like 10 times more, or, you know, more often throughout the day than his daughter was. So I think the challenge in online is you have to take these things that we would normally see as distractions and use those, you know, in the course somehow. You know, talking about phones, there's so many different apps you can pull in, and you know, flashcards for your phone, all these different things. I think the big challenge there, though, is, you know, sorting through, you know, the massive amount of options that you have there, you know, all the different apps. It's hard because there's so much there, but I think that if you can tap into that and sort of harness those distractive tendencies, you know, for your class somehow, then I think that can be helpful. It's just challenging because there is so much there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use a lot of pop culture, and they like that.
Yeah.
I use lots of YouTube videos and stuff, and they like that. They like talking about them, and, you know, and they like, wow, we're watching TV? Like, yeah, we're watching TV, you know. And that's one of the comments I get a lot of times on my evaluation. I didn't think you could learn anything from TV. Clearly, people don't watch the news. But that helps them because then they can visualize, like, you know, it's all well and good to talk about identity management, but it's another thing to watch Superman change from Clark Kent to Superman, and there's no mask, and that's what I talked about, he has no mask. Why don't they all get it? You know, there's no mask. Why don't they get it? Yeah.
And those glasses. Those darn glasses. The cape.
When they, if I just put it on a test, they won't get it. But if I put that in there and I say, okay, tell me how he changed, and then some of them go, well, he put on the suit. I'm like, yeah, but it's more. But then some of them go, no, because even with those glasses, that didn't do it. And I'm like, right, that didn't do it.
Yeah.
Lee Clark Kent doesn't wear glasses, which is just wrong. But that's a bad movie. 2 hours of your life, you'll never get that. But I do a lot of that, and I use stuff that's been on TV real recently, like I use The Closer and I use Bones, and I did use Man of Steel this past fall, and this semester I'm looking for Sleepy Hollow, and may use some Sherlock or something like that, and that helps with my discussions. At least then I get them to post to discussion boards, and they they have requirements for what they have to post and when they have to post, and you can't do it all in one day, so you can't come in on Sunday afternoon and get it all done, because that's not how we have discussions. And I am trying something new with group discussions this time, and that there can't be any orphan posts, because that just irks me to no end that the last 3 people who post don't get a reply. So this time, if there's orphan posts, everybody's grades is going to suffer, because that's not fair. They're not getting to discuss. And if the question was still open, and just because you were the eager beaver and went in on Sunday, and they didn't, doesn't mean they shouldn't be part of the discussion. They should still be part. So we're going to, I don't know how that's going to go. We're going to see how that's going to go. Right now they're all freaked out because they can't figure out where it is. And I made a video, but I made a video. I went into Screencast-O-Matic and I made a video. And like, click here, click here, click here, click here. So,
yeah. One of the things, I think Dee Creech was talking with me about this the other day, that they're doing in the math classes now. They're not online courses in the Math 55, but she was saying the new videos they're posting, they're requiring students to take notes, and they have to turn those notes in as a part of the assignment. And she said they've already seen an improvement, because before the video was available, but it's like we were saying, you watch it or not watch it, and they would just click through it, to say that they had watched it. And so actually requiring, them to submit notes over what they've watched, even if they don't get everything perfectly, they have to, make some effort. And she was saying that she'd already seen some improvement in that.
That's what I do. I've recorded lectures for each of the classes or each chapter, and some of them are broken into 3. But within that, there's a form I hand out, or it's available online. They're like, I'll teach or introduce a concept, and then they have to actually do it, and there's a form they fill out. And then in class, they can bring in that completed form, and then I'll give them the answers. So they actually are doing it while they're watching it, so they're not just watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, isn't that similar to that, okay, I'm dating myself, but that SQ3R method of note-taking that we were all taught, where they, if you're searching for something, you learn better than if you're just, sitting around in the la-la land, whatever. And that's kind of what that reminds me of. And yeah, that's what I try to get them to do with their quizzes. They won't, but it's what I try to get them to do. Take the quiz. Because for me, quizzes don't have a penalty. The only penalty for a quiz is if you don't take it. But otherwise, you can take it as many times as you want to, because the quiz is to teach. And so I want them to sit there with their book open. And I tell them the quizzes are totally book. Essay questions are my stuff, come totally from me. But quizzes come totally from the book. And I want you to sit there with your book open and search while you take that quiz, because you will learn it better. And of course, they take 42 seconds to take the quiz, so they haven't searched. The ones who do it, I think, really realize, oh wow, this is easier. And then the ones that don't, of course, take it 5,000 times to, I mean, you'll just look and they'll be attempt. Wow, you've got more time than I do. Do that.
Well, I think that's always the struggle too for me online, was the assessments part, and not just having it be quizzes, and not just discussion boards, and not just really trying to come up with some creative ways to assess what they're learning, so they're not just sitting and taking quizzes all the time, or having to write papers. But in class we do participation kinds of things, and I can get responses from them on the site, and I can see whether or not they're participating and so forth. But it's a lot harder to do that online, and it requires a lot more grading time. I mean, it just requires a lot of time to go through. And I think that's the thing. If you're going to give an assessment, you have to allot for yourself the amount of time it's going to take to review that for every student, because there's nothing worse. I actually had a faculty member here tell me this, because he's been taking he said every semester he just takes an online course from somewhere in the system, not from Jefferson necessarily, but he said, I just pick a course every semester and I take it online from somewhere. And he said, I never tell the faculty member that I am a faculty member or staff member. He said, I just, I don't want to set that up in the class. But he said, what I've quickly discovered is a lot of online faculty ask for a lot of writing and they don't read it. He said, I started, the first couple assignments I would write really in depth, and all I would get back is okay, or whatever the points were. And he said, then I started just slacking off and writing less and not even really addressing whatever the article was. And he said, my experience has been that I still get the check that I did it. And I said, I'm sure it's because that faculty member's just, taking in an immense amount of work, and and that's the thing I've always tried to avoid, is just having students do busy work, but really have it something that's going to be valuable that I'm going to take the time to review for them. And it's challenging. So what other kind of assessments do you guys use? I mean, besides quizzes and discussion boards, blogs you mentioned, tests, papers, what other kinds of assessments have you tried that work?
Just back to this quickly, I also, especially my database class, for every assignment I have a rubric, and it's very detailed, and I always tell them, read everything in the rubric before, and they have access to it in the assignment area and also in the grade book. But read everything in there, because if you follow all of that, or if you have any questions, let me know. You will get a good grade, and the ones who do, I mean, you can tell, because then I can just check off the list. I'm grading it objectively and not subjectively, which I found before. I had a problem by the time you had like a whole lesson, you're like, oh, just go ahead.
Yeah.
You did okay, but now I don't have that problem.
Yeah.
It makes grading so much easier.
Yeah, especially for writing assignments. That's a good
Well, mine aren't
that's a
really
good
right.
tip. Well, yeah.
But yeah, probably for
But I do them for discussion boards. I do rubrics for discussion boards.
Yeah.
And it has, and what I found was the grades went up a little bit, because I found I was kind of harsh on some of them. And so that rubric took a lot of that out, if they said something.
Right.
Because, if they said something completely idiotic, and you're kind of like, oh my God. But you're like, well, okay, that's their opinion, and that's their answer, and they did what they were required to do. They like it, but they didn't. And so it took that out. Yeah, I think you're right. It took that out for me. So I was kind of surprised, actually. But I think for them it worked out well. And then they can't complain, because all they can do is open it up, and you can write your comments in each little box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and I haven't got any more complaints either. So yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And the Blackboard rubric's easier than I thought it was going to be.
Easy.
They
Yeah,
are. They really are.
Yeah.
I do projects for interpersonal, but projects are hard. I mean, they're really hard because, you break it down, and now I've got it like into something that I think should just be so easy, and it's 5 or 6 steps, and, and then you have them emailing you the night before it's due, can I do this? I'm like, no, you can't do that. The project was supposed to take 2 weeks. How are you going to do it the night before? Well, I've been doing it all along. No. No. So I have problems with that. They, they want to pick a goal, and I'm like, that's not the assignment, and they get mad. And then the amount of grading that it takes me hours and hours and hours to go through a project, and I, because I would ideally in interpersonal love to do more projects, but physically I'm like, it's exhausting sometimes to do the ones I do. And I thought that was interesting that they said in here working with peers, reduced anxiety, and that is not been the case in my online students. They do not like it. They do. And I mean, I do a big preface about this is life, people. I'm sorry if you hate it, but this is life. I mean, do you know how many committees I have to sit on? Yes, some of them do their work completely online, and this is a real world experience, and I'm real sorry if you don't like it, but suck it up and get it done. And I'm like, we all have work on committees, some that function great, some that don't function so well, some that function online. And I'm like, suck it up and get it done. And they're like, well, that's just not right, and that's just not fair. And I'm like, drop the class, which is my answer, because I tell them that the first day, you've got to do this. And if you don't like it, drop the class and pick another. There are other people who don't do this. But their anxiety goes through, I mean, you can almost feel it coming through the computer when that
Yeah.
thing comes up, because, I mean, it just, you can just feel it. Just get a grip. Well, I don't want to meet a strange person. Okay, first of all, you
We're all
people watch way
strange,
too much
don't get
TV. And second of all, you don't have to meet them. That's what chat's for.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
all online.
It's all online. Why would
Yeah.
you ever have to go meet them? You know, and you can't convince them that they don't have. That's been really problematic for me. And I won't get rid of my projects because it's interpersonal. How are you going to get rid of projects? How are you going to get rid of dealing with people?
Yeah.
You know, you can't.
Yeah,
That's
well,
my
and I
biggest
think,
challenge.
yeah, I was gonna say, I think
That's what I'd like
sometimes,
somebody to tell me how to figure out.
it's saying how you set the parameters and how you discuss that with students too. I know it's a challenge. One of the things that I've done is have them complete, with any big project that I'm asking them to do, I'll have them turn in steps along the way.
That's what
I do that too.
Yeah.
get them on the right track before the next major thing.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I try to do too, and we talk back and forth, you know, because I have to okay their goal.
Okay.
And if I don't okay their goal, they can't do it. And some of them will do it anyway. Sorry about your luck, that's a zero.
Yeah.
But then they'll email me the night before, well, I meant to tell you this. No, I can't do that. And so I'm, you know, and maybe that's where that persistent issue comes in, when it gets kind of tough. You know, when I tell them their first goal, well, this is not quite right. Let's go in this direction a little more. What do you think about that? And then 3 weeks go by, and I'm like, really? You know, because I try to always give suggestions when I say that's not the right kind of goal. Like, I want to quit smoking. And how is that affecting your interpersonal life? I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying tell me how. Well, then they go blank, and they're like, well, it's not. If you want to quit, it probably is.
Yeah.
You just need to think through that a little further.
Yeah.
But that, so yeah, I think that that's a real challenge, because, and you know, because this article, and I posted a lot of this stuff online, but this article, when they were talking about it reduces anxiety, I'm like, okay, well, that's just so not true, because I can feel it come through the screen. And then they talk about, well, you know, gen ed classes have certain attending problems. Hello, everything I teach is gen ed. And so it has all of those problems that come with it too. And, you know, the technology issues, and for us, the technical support issue, which I emailed for sales about, you got my email last year. And, you know, so when I'm reading through this, I'm like, maybe it's not the motivation of the online students that much. Maybe there's some bigger issues here that, if we got around them, might help some of that.
Mhm.
Like when technical support lies to them, which they did. And then I got this really vicious email from the student. But, you know, so I read through this whole article and I was thinking, I don't know if y'all do this, but I always go back and forth with the authors whenever I read an article. So I'm always arguing with them, going, really? Did you really say that? But I just found a lot of their stuff, I mean, I found some of it very interesting.
Mhm.
Like, I think we do a good job here with professional development. You know, we have Patty and she does her training. And then there is some online Blackboard training that you know, and stuff you can work through. And I think on that end, we probably do a better job than a lot of places do, I think. You know, I mean, if you want to teach a Blackboard here, you've got the backup to be able to do it, as far as to get in there and learn it and know how to do it. And I think that part we really excel in. We do not excel in technical support. In fact, we have none. In fact, now I even refer to it in class as technical non-support. And sometimes I think that there were a couple of other issues, and I thought, yeah, that's an issue. Like, you know, constantly feeling like you're catching up because we're switching course packs again. And so that running on the treadmill kind of thing, where you feel like you don't get anywhere because you just caught up with the last one and now it's going to change again. And that takes up time and energy that I think you'd rather put in your course.
Mhm.
But, you know,
Well, and that is one of the things that they mention and talk a little bit about at the end is, you know, we can talk about motivating the students, but we also have to talk about what motivates the online instructor. I mean, and I've heard varying things. I know that there are a lot of people who would like to teach more online because they, you know, enjoy it. It's easier for them. It's more convenient. They maybe don't particularly like being in the classroom with students, and I don't say that in a negative way. I just mean that they're not the kind of person who likes to stand in front of students or something like that. And then there are those who say, I've been teaching online and I've had so many struggles, I don't want to do this anymore. So one of the things that I would like for us to be able to do too is to better hone in on what is it that online faculty need. I mean, are there things that we could do to help motivate online faculty or offer them? And of course, usually when we talk about things that we can do, they're non-expensive things. But, what are some of the things that we could do to help motivate faculty online?
I'd like to see more discipline-focused workshops. Because so many of us, April's course is going to be so different than mine. I would really like to see more of what writing instructors do, and copy their ideas that work, and share mine that do. I would really like that.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. I mean, and sometimes I think for me too, I agree with you. It is helpful to see what other people in your discipline are doing, and I think sometimes it's helpful to see what people outside your discipline are doing. Because I've gotten ideas from, just have a different perspective on the way we teach in different disciplines, and I've gotten good ideas from people in other disciplines sometimes too that, but I agree, maybe having some discipline-specific workshops would be helpful.
I think it'd be helpful to have like PD Day, but for online.
We
Where
talked about that.
yeah, some of it's like discipline specific, and some of it's technology specific, and then some of it's brainstorm and throw it out ideas specific.
Well, they do, it seems like they include a session in every.
They include a session, but a lot of the time it's a limited session. But I think it'd be neat to have just a whole PD Day just devoted to online.
Yeah. When I first started teaching online, we had that, and I think just scheduling and the timing and everything, because I've talked with a lot of newer online faculty, and that's one of the things they've said. I wish I had some kind of professional development or something before I started teaching. And I'm not really sure all the reasons why we ended that. I know that Elizabethtown does an online PD day, I believe, and maybe some of the other colleges too. So maybe it may have just been a scheduling thing was one of the reasons that we moved away from that. And I know in the last couple of years we've been talking about starting it again.
Paige has moved from being more technical support to being in the PD arena. And one of the things that she started last fall was doing these regional PD days. And this spring, Southwest is going to host one.
Oh, okay.
On April the 11th, I think it is. And we're still working the details out on those. But whether you go to, we have one in Western Kentucky, one in Eastern Kentucky, and one in Central Kentucky. And whether you go to any of those, the agenda will be exactly the same. And if the instructor is not able to teach at all three locations so that it's the same, they have to work with the other people who are going to be presenting so that we're giving identical workshops. And there are 4 classifications, is that what you call them? There's one on pedagogy.
Oh, tracks.
Tracks, yeah. Pedagogy, and then how-tos, and I can't remember what the others are.
Is this related to the COILS thing?
Yeah. And so
She still does work.
more will be coming out, and in fact her registration for that will be coming out really soon.
Oh,
but
good.
we've identified April the 11th for hosting it on the Southwest campus. So I'm really hoping, So I'm really hoping that a lot of us will be able to go, and I really fought to get that here because we are the largest, and I think it should be convenient to our people. We had a lot of people last fall go to Madisonville, and we had a few even go down to Hazard, and several went to Bluegrass. But the fact that it's going to be here, so kind of mark the calendars, and I haven't said anything else on it yet.
Well, and one of my concerns, we were talking earlier about the fact that this was based on results from part-time faculty, but a lot of us who are full-time faculty take advantage of those opportunities or can take advantage of those opportunities, but part-time faculty really struggle to be able to do that. And I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping, having the class and being able to post some things online, at least give them a forum to start to connect. I've heard from a couple part-time faculty who have said, I'm so happy about this because I'd just like to know who else I could talk to in my discipline who's teaching online. And so I think sometimes we just forget, because we're here full time, that other people don't have those connections. So in the interest of time, the last couple questions that we can focus on is, I would just like for everybody to talk about one of the things, and some of you have already talked about some things, that's okay, that you do in your online class that you think is most influential for your students. And I'll tell you one of the things that, I'll start. One of the things that I tried in the last couple years that I taught interpersonal and then intro to COM was holding a live chat. And students don't really like it. They're afraid of it. I mean, they don't like the idea of it. They're afraid of it. But once we actually spent a half an hour, I really structured the chat. We had real structured discussion questions. And my goal with that chat was not to see how much they know or to see if they've, reached some sort of goal, but to just really give them the chance to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And when we start them, they're always really nervous and they're afraid and they don't want to do it and they don't like the idea. And I cannot tell you how many students, I do one fairly early in the semester and then one a little bit later. I can't tell you how many students have said it made all the difference in the world to me because I suddenly realized I'm not in this alone, and they do seem to connect with other students in the class after that. They kind of find out who else came to the chat, who might have said some of the things that they were thinking, and it gives them that connection. It's a killer for the instructor because you have to offer it. I would usually have 5 different chats that lasted about a half hour, over a course of 2 weeks. So I have to schedule them into my schedule as well because it's very difficult for all the students to be, you can't just do it one time and think they can all be there. So I think that's a challenge, is just the timing of it, but it seemed to me that it was one of the most beneficial things and one of the things that students really appreciated the most too in the class. So what are some of the things that you do that you think are really influential for students?
I communicate a lot with my students via email or just posting something on the announcements, because I want them to know that I'm paying attention to what you're doing. I want you to be successful. That's why I'm contacting you. And I always end every one of my emails with, let me know if you have any questions. And I think that makes a big difference. Because I've heard so many stories from students, whether it be through the advising center or if they're taking an on-campus class, that basically will tear apart an instructor because the instructor does not communicate with them, does not return their email, or just makes it difficult to find that win-win situation. I mean, you can tell a student you're going to fail, or you have failed, and still manage to do it in a way that you can find that win-win, as opposed to having a disgruntled student. Mm-hmm. Communication's the key.
Mm-hmm. And communicating via email, students can't see your face. And I've had emails from individuals that I know personally, and I know that the way the email reads is not the way they intended it to. It comes across really harsh. And so I always try to be very careful about the wording of things because it reads differently when you're reading it than it does if you can see the person.
Yeah, I think we're playing on what Liz said, just responding quickly, grading quickly. I mean, I try to grade the same day. I always respond the same day unless, it's overnight or something, But I think just a quick response is, the same thing. I mean, to let them know that they are important. I mean, I've heard a lot of comments too about instructors who take a long time. I mean, I think one time I heard that it was like the end of the semester before they even knew what their grades were. I mean, I don't know how that works, but